Hello, hi everyone, and welcome to Coproduce Care. Today we're doing a hashtag chat for care evening, and we're going to have a couple of fantastic guests. Bear with me a second. And I'm really excited about today. So we have the Minister for Care, Helen Whately, who's going to be joining us in a few seconds. And then we're going to be followed by Robin Batchelor, who is the co-founder of the Care Badge, which now we've all heard about, but obviously it's been going for quite a while now. So for people who don't know me, my name is Sophie Chester-Glynn, and I am the founder of Coproduce Care. I'm the director. And the whole idea around Coproduce Care is to democratise the care debate, open it up, and help more people understand what care is about, what it entails, and also to help people do practical things like engage with consultations and policy changes. So we're quite a new organisation. We started late last year and way before the COVID outbreak. But we felt that it was really important to start a series of live streams with some fantastic guests and talk about what's going on, especially in social care, because I also work in social care, but also linking in with health related issues as well. So before I move on, I'm just going to remind people, if you're watching on YouTube, please press the subscribe button and the bell so that you'll find out when we go live with other guests. And also, if you have any thoughts, any comments, then do put them in the comments box, because we want to make this a lively debate. We don't want to just be talking at you or just listening to what we're saying. We want to have some engagement. So I've been really lucky. I did go out on Twitter, and my team did as well. And what we're trying to do is trying to represent some of the questions that you've been putting for us to put to the Minister tonight. And we are really, really lucky to have her with us. I know she's extremely busy. So without further ado, I will introduce the Minister, Helen Whately. Hello, Helen.
Hello, hi, good to speak to you.
You too. Thank you so much for coming on this evening. How are you coping in lockdown, post-lockdown?
Oh, well, I'd say that it's one of those things. I think for lots of people, it's a really strange time where, if like me, you're mostly working from home. So on the one hand, you're at home, but on the other hand, incredibly busy. And all day, every day. Somebody asked me the other day when I had last had a day off, and I realized I don't think I've had one since lockdown started. But we're in a pandemic, it's a crisis, and I just want to do everything that I possibly can do to help, and so that's what I'm doing.
Great. And so I'm going to go straight in with some of the questions that have come up for you. And talking about help, yesterday was a huge announcement from the Chancellor talking about the 600 million and the support for care providers. So that was great news. And actually quite a lot of questions have come up about funding. Okay. And some people have asked, well, is the funding coming to the front line? Is it going to care providers so it can filter down to people working in care? And I know there's been two sets of, big tranches, they call them, of money. It sounds quite large for the sector to help cope with COVID. But the 600 million, so that's for infection control. And you sent out a letter, because I work in a care organisation, and a letter came out just explaining how that is going to work for us. And one of the things that I read was that in order to get receipt of that money, care providers are going to have to make sure that they fill in information for their local authority. Do you know what information we're going to have to provide to make sure that we get access to that money? Do you know that detail as yet?
Yeah, so I'll take a step back and talk a bit about the overall package, and then come to your particular questions, if that works. So I'd say a couple of weeks ago we published the Social Care Action Plan, which was overall to boost the support and the guidance for across the whole of social care. So that was across care homes, it was across domiciliary care, It was thinking about a range of forms of care, supported living, shared lives, and also actually thinking about informal care, where people are cared for by unpaid carers. And so that was a really broad piece of work to support the sector. But what we realised, in fact, almost as we were doing that, is that there was a particular challenge facing care homes and the residential care sector for older people, where we have, sadly, really sadly, seen people dying, and lots of care homes affected by outbreaks. So about 35% of care homes in that category have had outbreaks of COVID, and we know that once it's in the care home, it can be so hard to control and to prevent people falling sick. And then you've got residents who are at really high risk, if they do catch it, of then having complications and dying from it. So we have done this piece of work particularly to support care homes. And what we've done is thought, well, how can we help care providers who are at the front line be able to really, really do everything possible to prevent residents getting ill, and to keep them safe and well. And doing that, knowing that the care system is so complicated. It's not like the NHS, which is much more one organisation. You've got lots of different businesses and providers providing care. And so we're trying to kind of do all the wraparound that we can. So speaking to providers, and it's very much in response to what they said would be helpful, with on the one hand drawing in the NHS, and so can the NHS do more to help care homes? And for instance, every care home should be getting a named clinician who is their point of contact, and who will give them more support on looking after the residents' clinical needs. Then on testing, we are rolling out testing so that every member of staff and resident at a care home will get access to testing over the next few weeks. So we're doing that. And then the other thing, and I'm coming then to the funding questions, is about the workforce, and trying to make it easier for care homes to have somebody who only works in that care home, who doesn't go between different care homes, and also trying to help care homes, if their staff say are tested and they test as COVID positive, that member of staff will have to go and isolate. We really want that member of staff to get full sick pay while they're having to isolate. And so this new pot of funding is particularly to support that. It's to support the infection control measures, and particularly to support the extra costs and extra pay to the workforce if they're only able to work in one place, or isolating. Then I was just question about I was about how to get to the front line, but come in, and if there's something else,
just because in terms of getting access to that money, it's kind of like pitched as something that care providers can just automatically get funding and access to, but actually it's based on the fact that they have to provide information. And I'm conscious, as a care provider, if you are trying to manage a service, one provider said they've got somebody working 40 hours a week just on getting PPE, and you're also trying to manage employment law and keep your staff safe. If you've also then got to fill out whether it's capacity track, I think that was mentioned in the letter, and you miss it, or you're just not able to keep up with it, is it actually fair to ask care providers to have to make sure that they fill out all this paperwork to access the money? Shouldn't there be another way of maybe getting that money, making sure that local authorities are working better together and not asking for so much money from providers? Is that something that you might consider?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's really, really hard, where on the one hand, you want to make it as quick and easy for care providers to get the money that they need to do the service, and as you say, not to have to spend lots of time filling in forms and things like that. On the other hand, when you've got like a big system and lots of requests for support and lots of requests for help, and you've got to decide where your resources go. I mean, and even in going to the Treasury and getting money for the care sector, you've got to be able to say to the Treasury why it's needed and what it's needed for. And yeah, for me as care minister, I can't just go to the Chancellor and say, well, no, we need this money. He's going to say, well, how's it going to be spent? And then he's going to say to me in a month or two's time, well, how was the money spent? And that's kind of the only way to make sure that it goes to where it's most needed, because everybody's saying they need it. So that is why. Go on, sorry.
I think the point really was, it's not so much that, it's just having another hurdle that providers have to get through in order to get the money. But I wanted to move on to the issue with non-white groups and how they're affected, and how our social care system actually is full of people who are non-white, and potentially there's a huge risk to them. And I wanted to just highlight, I'm just going to bring up a report that was out recently, and this is of a railway worker. And Bele Majinga, she died because somebody spat at her, and she died shortly afterwards, a couple of weeks afterwards. And I wonder, in the care sector, whether we should be thinking of special measures to support care providers to provide extra support for their staff who are from those groups.
I mean, that was just the most awful story. I mean, really, really sad that she died, and leaving children, and also that awful that she was spat at. I mean, just clearly just horrid. Coming to the question about care workers, I mean, so we're looking at this in the NHS and in social care, and as a minister, one of my areas of oversight is also NHS workforce, so I try and look at both together. And we're looking at what are the extra risk factors that might mean that you need to take extra care if you're somebody who, for instance, is coming into contact with somebody who has COVID. That's across the NHS and social care. And so something, so we're looking at whether ethnicity is a risk, whether it is a risk factor or not. And as you say, we know that more people who are BAME have very sadly been having complications and dying for coronavirus. It seems that the particular risk factors that the scientists are telling me is it's to do with your age and your health conditions. But we're trying to unpick this so that it will be possible to say, okay, for each individual worker, let's understand whether they're more or less at risk, and then therefore what the steps you need to take to make sure that they're as safe as possible doing their work. And so that's the way it's being looked at across the NHS and for social care.
Yeah, the only thing I would say, I was speaking to Roy Lilly about this yesterday, and actually I think the stats and the statistics are actually quite clear. And what we could do now, rather than leaving people exposed, is just put in extra measures, maybe ensuring there's certain types of PPE, or that their exposure is limited. And it would be really helpful if we could look at that in more depth going forward, and not wait for the reviews, which do obviously take a long time. And with loosening lockdown, that is going to put a lot of people again at risk. But staying on the theme of care workers, I know in Wales that they're giving care workers £500, I think, as a reward for what they're doing. Is there something like that that's going to come forward in England?
Well, so I think, as you said earlier, lots of extra money has been coming through to support social care. And initially that's been 1.6 billion, and then a further payment through local authorities, also 1.3 billion through the NHS. And that some of that has been intended to support the pay for the workforce. And then there's this extra amount that I mentioned, the 600 million, to go and make sure that workers are on full pay, should they have to be isolated, or should they see a drop in pay because of the infection control measures. So I think it's really, really important that we're making sure that money does get through to the workforce. And the overall, I want to see a direction of travel that we need to go in on social care, and making sure that people do get fair pay for the incredibly important work that people do. So I think that's the overall approach I think we should take. Sorry?
There's nothing coming through in England like that.
500
to care workers.
Yeah, no, I know. I've been asked the same question for NHS workers, and should every worker in the NHS get a bonus? And I think let's look at the whole situation in the round and say, overall, the important thing is to make sure that we are paying workers fairly, and I want to see social care workers well paid. One thing that I really hope will come out of this whole, out of the pandemic, is people actually really realizing the important work that care workers do, the value of the work, the commitment, the compassion, the skills involved, that it's not anybody who can do the job. And actually that's really, as a society, start really valuing our care workers more. I think that's really important, and I really want that to be an outcome from this.
Money is important too, so hopefully, like you said, if we could start valuing them, going forward in monetary terms, in pensions, that they don't get the pensions that are available in the NHS, and other nuances that obviously needs to be looked at. But it just feels at the moment there's in so much risk on the front line. Just you hear about care workers in tents and sleeping in tents and such like. But also the issue with learning disabilities came up this today, and how actually people in the community with learning disabilities, there's a high statistic of them catching COVID and also dying. And there's a whole section which a lot of the public might not know about called supported living, and they're very exposed, because in care homes you're used to dealing with things like flu, and there's a lot of care resources and sometimes nurses that go into these services. Do you think that there's a risk that supported living services could be the next care home statistics in 3 weeks' time if we don't give those type of services more support?
Well, I think it's important for the whole of the social care sector to have support. One thing we've done is made sure that supported living services, if they need PPE, for instance, should be able to get it through the local authority and through the local resilience forums. And that's something that was put to me by some providers of supported living services, that they were struggling to get PPE. So we've made sure that is one of the extra things to support, as well as publishing guidance to help those who are working in supported living. So I think I want to make sure that there's support across the whole of the sector. We've done this particular piece of work on care homes that I just mentioned, because that's where we've seen the real problem with outbreaks and very sadly people dying. But so that's been a particular area that we've had to focus on. But I do know that we need to make sure there's the right support across the whole of the sector.
Yeah. Someone, and just looking at the chat, I know we only got a couple minutes left with you, and I don't know if it's your internet or mine, but I think we're looking a bit hazy. But as long as everyone can hear us. Testing. So I've had a few about testing, and actually people either going and trying to get testing, it's not coming back in time. It's massively delayed. I can't see who it is, saying that they were told to call 111, and it was Public Health England, as they're a care home, and then Public Health England said they needed to go through the government. So it's very confusing. At one point it was Care Quality Commission that was managing the testing, and now there are different routes, and especially when people have again, we talked about learning disabilities. Do you have any comments on how testing is going, or how it might need to improve?
Yeah, and I know it's I wish it was less complicated. It is confusing because there are different systems in place for different circumstances. So, for instance, if you are a care home for older people and you have somebody symptomatic and it's a first case, then you call your local health protection team, and that's been up and running for some time, because that's like part of the normal process that most care homes will already know about, involving their local health protection team if they've got an infection like this. While there's a different system for the blanket testing that we're now rolling out for care homes for older people, which is being done through a portal where care homes can register they want to get that blanket testing. And then we're working with directors of public health to prioritise according to where there's particular risk factors and get that blanket testing happening all the way across. I also know that at the moment the testing has been focused in the care sector on the one hand on care workers, and on the other hand on residents in the care homes for older people. And then the next thing we need to do is start looking at other groups, and for instance improving the access to testing for those in other age categories. And this is all about, as the capacity of tests that we have increases, making sure that we use it in the best possible way. And on the one hand, care homes are saying, well, can't we start being tested every week or every 2 weeks? Do you do that? Versus do you find that actually clinically you need to make access to testing to another group? So this is some of the things that Public Health England and the scientists are giving the guidance on, is how we should make best use of the testing resources that we've got.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose just to take away that I think a lot of the things that the government are doing, it seems very top down, and to involve people, whether it's care providers, people with lived experience. I mean, we're called Coproduce Care, just in rolling out these things and making sure that they're fit, because social care is so nuanced, and there's so many more questions that I don't have time to ask you now that came through. Involving people in the process of making these rules, I think, is crucial in hitting the nail on the head with anything that the government does. And I know I need to let you go, but I just must tell you this one story that I heard, and it really worried me. So it was a manager who oversees a service, I think it's a supported living one in the community, and they look after somebody who's a person of working age. They call them, not elderly. And that person is spitting in staff's face, and they do use the shields. And now that he's going to take those off and start doing that. And when she approached social services in her area, the local authority, they just told her to stay safe. And there is a worry that there isn't enough support for those community care providers and support services, because you and I both know there's the Coronavirus Act that should step in those sorts of circumstances, because that person is presenting with COVID symptoms. Again, just working with people, I think, is going to make a huge difference to the efficacy of policies going forward. But I know I need to let you go.
Well, thank you. It's really good, and I have taken a look at the comments that have come in on the chat, and I will pick up on some of those things that have been raised. I mean, we do all we can to try and make sure that we do work with, for instance, care providers, involve care workers actually in some of the development of policy. I speak to user representative groups as well. So we do try and work with as much across the sector. I mean, you can't talk to everybody because it's just not possible to have a conversation with millions of people for doing this. But we do try and involve people. I think there's always a tension between wanting to get everything right centrally versus, as you say, actually you can't do everything from the centre, and there's a really important role for local authorities to play, and local authorities are closer to the care system in their area. But that does mean that one local authority do one thing and another will do another. But we're trying to, I have regular conversations with local authority representatives, say, please, can you all make sure you're doing what the best of you are doing, and it's best practice, and to get that shared. But I must say, we're all doing our very best. So thank you for giving me the chance to join you this evening, and I'm very happy to come on, and thank you to all the questions and comments that have come up, and to all the people who do hands-on care, whether it's formal or informal. Thank you for all that you're doing at this, what I know is a really, really difficult time.
Thank you so much for joining us. Take care. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Cut her off on a prime there. So really sorry, everybody, that the reception was a little bit iffy there. I hope you managed to at least hear what the minister was saying. And I know there's so many questions we weren't able to get through, but we will record those questions, and studio team, please make sure you do that, and we will make sure that they're up, and we will send them to the minister's office as well, to see if that does help in future policy making. So that's the first half of what we have tonight over with. But we are still on the go, and we have another guest with us, Robin Batchelor, explained before. But before I bring him in, I just want to ask everybody who is watching, if you haven't done so already, please do subscribe if you're on YouTube to our YouTube channel, and press the bell. If you're on Facebook, I know a lot of you are on Facebook, then we have our Facebook page, like it, and then you can just keep up to date with everything that we're doing. And we don't ask for anything. I mean, we're just made up of volunteers and people who want to widen the debate. So all we're really asking for is for people to follow us, and the more you follow us, the more you like it, the more that you tweet on the hashtag Chat for Care, the more we can get more people listening in and hearing about what we've got to say, because I think we've got some great guests on tonight and coming up as well in the future. Right, that's enough of that. I'm going to bring in Robin. Hello, how are you?
Hi there, Sophie. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Welcome. And before we get going, I'm just going to bring up do I have a picture of the Care Badge somewhere? Maybe Tobias can help me. There we are. So this is the Care Badge. This is the logo if no one's seen it before. And you have Robin, he's wearing it there. I couldn't have mine today because my 5-year-old did something with it. I don't know what. If in doubt, blame it on the children. But can you just start off and explain to us how the idea of a Care Badge came to you?
So I think I shared the frustration that many of us have, that the social care sector is seen as being a bit of a Cinderella sector. And I came to be that we were in a conference, actually, sitting at the Future of Care in February last year, listening to Professor Martin Green, and he was talking about the care sector and how it's up to all of us to do what we can to come up with our own answers, and that we can't always wait for the government. And he highlighted the unfortunate message that the Secretary of State portrayed at the time with wearing one badge, given that he is the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care. And I turned to my colleague and I said, well, I think we can do something about that. So that was the genesis of the idea. And the aim really was to raise awareness, raise appreciation of what social care is across the UK, and provide that identity that social care should have in the way that the NHS has. So it was out of a general sense of frustration, the deserved sense of needing an identity for social care that everyone can get behind and feel part of. And and it's gone very well.
Fantastic. And you're not, obviously it's you and Martin Professor Martin Green, co-founders. Day job as well outside of that, which is with Every Life Technologies.
That's right. Yep. So Martin, after the conference, when Martin spoke, I went to him straight away and said, "Why don't we do this together?" And it was great because he was very positive. He said, "Yep, that's a great idea. Let's do that." And that meant that the Care Badge moved on. And if he had been negative or we hadn't had that support at the time, as is often the case with an idea, sometimes if you don't get some support, you might decide not to do it. Whereas Care England were very supportive, and then laterally the National Care Forum came on board. And this is something that, yes, you're right. I'm from Every Life Technologies, and we're a care software provider. And so we run the Care Badge as volunteers. And it was great to see the buy-in when we went back to the office and said, like, what about this idea? Everyone was like, yeah, let's do this. Let's work on the design. Let's get the badges made. We did worry about how are we going to actually do the logistics of sending them out. But everybody volunteered, stuffed envelopes in their breaks, in their evenings, took them to the post room, chased invoices, wrote labels. So, yeah, that's how it came about. And it was run as a volunteer organization within Every Life.
Right. And I've worked in social care for as long as I can remember, and I've always felt, which is probably why I started with Coproduce Care, I've always felt, like you said, social care is a Cinderella service, but also it just doesn't get the recognition in any way at all, whether it's with people understanding what we're about, what we do, whether it's about paying conditions, whether it's about representation in the media. And I know we're going to come on to the criticism later, but of the Care Badge, but when I heard about it, I thought, oh, finally there's something. It's not the be all and end all, but every time you have somebody from the Department of Health and Social Care, or health, Department of Health as it was, come on, it's always the NHS badge. And you just think social care just isn't represented anywhere ever, So when it came about, it's a great design. It's slick. And I know that the people I work with, they were like, when can we get one? Because people have pride in what they do. And some people might say, oh, it's just a badge. And obviously it's not going to be the answer to all the problems in social care, but it's something because the bar's so low for us.
It's a great start is what my takeaway from it. We were a volunteer organization that managed to sell over 120,000 badges in a 6-month period. So the uptake was really strong, but if you're really going to create that identity for 2 million people that work in social care, it needed to be done at a professional level. And the great thing is the government has it now. The Secretary of State owns it. So they will be able to scale it up at a level that we never could, and they're able to use it in ways that we never could. So it was great to see it on that adult social care plan that the minister talked about. It's great to see it in the Care app that they launched recently. So the identity is starting to be seen more often, and therefore, it's starting to fulfill the purpose that we hoped it would. We're getting there slowly.
Yeah, I think so, absolutely. And do you still have any involvement in it at all, or is everything handed over to the government?
It's pretty much handed over. The last set of badges that we had in stock is now with the minister's department, and we've signed over all the branding and the trademarks. So really, our involvement has ended now, which is fine, because we couldn't take it to the next level that social care deserves it to be at. So it's in the hands of those that can now.
Yeah, I think so. What do you think of the criticisms that I often see on Twitter, far more than I want to?
Yeah, I understand them. I understand them. It's the frustration within social care that's been there for a while. We haven't had the funding. We haven't had the appreciation. So we haven't had the appreciation. We haven't had the awareness. We haven't had the funding. And at the time, there were other issues around PPE and real frontline difficulties going on. So I understand that anybody that's out there on the front line doing that job is going to say, the badge is great, but I need more right now. And so I understand that. And the badge was never intended to solve all of social care's problems. It was intended to give us all an identity that we could rally behind and raise awareness and appreciation. And I think it's done that. So I understand the frustrations and the people that weren't so happy about it. I think there was a lot of people that were very happy about it. In the 48 hours from the announcement, we had over 400 inquiries for badges. And we had told people, please don't give us an inquiry because we're not selling them anymore. And that compares to 400 companies that bought the badge in the preceding 6 months. So there was a huge amount of contact very quickly thereafter saying, I would like to have the badge, please. And this is great because I want that identity and I want to wear it with pride. And so I was very pleased with that. But I do understand where the criticisms came from. So it's great to see the minister talking about social care. And, the pandemic's brought massive challenges to everybody, but social care is starting to get talked about a bit more and given a bit more help, more to come, hopefully.
Yes, and it was good to hear that this isn't the end. She talked about there being more than, when I mentioned about Wales and the 5, she's like, okay, we're not going to get that, but there's more down the line. I think it's just for us to keep pressing to say, well, what does that look like? What will that be? Yes, we've got the badge, but it's got to be more. And I suppose we just all hope that when that does come, we are all involved in the debate of what that should look like, because it's we don't like other things that have happened very quickly for COVID. We don't want to get things wrong. So so let's see what happens. I wonder whether the uptake that you had was so successful because of the pricing, because it was, I think, started when we bought them for £1 each back last year when you were managing them.
We did that on purpose. Because the aim was twofold. It was, number one was get a lot of badges out there, because there's nothing better than walking along a street and seeing somebody else wearing a care badge. You know, seeing that they're in the industry that you're in, or walking on the street and somebody asking you, what's the badge for? And that's an invitation to have a conversation about care. To, again, raise the awareness, raise the profile. But to do that, we wanted to keep the badges as cheap as possible. So they were sold for £1. And then when we went over the VAT threshold, it went up to £1.20. That meant there was a little bit of money left over. Not a lot, depended on the type of fixing and the postage and so on. And all of that money was then donated to care charities that were nominated by care workers. We had a charity committee of 3 care workers who would sift through the nominations and select those. And then we handed grants out. And we managed to give away, I think we've given away just over £40,000, and we've got about a total of £50,000 to give away. So in a 6-month period, that's not bad, particularly given that that wasn't the aim. The aim was not to raise money. The aim was to raise awareness. The raising of money was a secondary positive factor, but it's gone to some great charities, and I'm very pleased to see that that's happened. And they were nominated by carers. So yeah, we kept the badge price low, get lots out, get the identity out there, and raise a bit of money as well.
It's great because some of the videos that I did last year, you could see a lot of people wearing them, and people just grabbing onto it, and you know, it is nice. And sometimes you feel like, you know, should ministers just wear both of them, so it's not an either or, the NHS badge and the care badge,
or side by side, shoulder to shoulder.
That's right, you know, because I don't know. The jury's out on that. We'll see. Maybe people can put in the comments what they think. I wonder whether we should be, or the government should be, just handing out the care badge for free. That would really get awareness out, because I think there is a price to it now.
It's something that we don't know what they're going to do. I think it's no small feat that they've undertaken to take the badge out and create that identity at the much larger scale than we could. Is not an easy and quick thing to do. And but I know they're working hard on it. So I look forward to seeing that out. The badge will, I think, be a slightly different color of green than the ones we have. It will be more the Department of Health and Social Care green, which is slightly lighter. So they've got to make a quick change to the badge. They've got to get badges. They've got to create this identity. They're working on that. And I look forward to seeing that coming through. I think that's going to be really positive for the sector.
Yeah.
In fact, every time I see the logo on one of the documents that comes out from the government or on television, it just says to me, social care is starting to get the recognition. It's not perfect, but it has started. And, you know, we're going to see more of that. And that's I think, a big positive.
Yeah, it's true. I noticed it in the documents on the letter heading that came out from the department today that I was reading, and also on some of the local authorities, their signature on their emails, they've put that on as well. So yeah, it's getting there. It's all happening.
What would be great just to see is, you know, the next time we light up a city or something in a blue, let's light it up in a green. You know, let's have that level of recognition for social care. You know, I've had councils ask, how do we get the logo so that we can fly flags for social care?
Okay.
But so, you know, but that's not with me now. But so I think there's lots of good things to come here.
There is good things. And I think, you know, just marrying in what it is with everything going forward, I can imagine when we're all able to go out and march for better conditions for care workers, we can get care badge logo banners out, so you know, and that people will be like, okay, you know, like you've got Extinction Rebellion type, the triangle, you know, you just that identity, we know what we're doing, we're out there for our care workers. But yeah, so I also wanted to explore the other stuff that you do with Every Life Technologies, because from talking to you before, it sounds that the way that you operate is very much including your staff team and getting them to think about ideas of developing and being creative and innovative. There's stuff that you do to involve your team.
Well, I've got a great team, a fantastic group of 60 individuals that just want to make a difference in social care. A very strong social purpose runs through the company. So that's why the Care Badge, we managed to do it, because so many people were willing to put their time and effort to that. Another one was recently, as the Care Badge was sort of drawing to a close for us and handing off to better things, with the pandemic, we suddenly thought, well, what about, what software do you need right now to help measure infection in your care businesses, amongst your staff as well, your employees? How do we know if they want to self-isolate? How do we measure if they need PPE? How do you report that back to the office? And it was the team that came up with these questions. And then they said, right, we're going to do something about this. And in 2 weeks, they went from an idea to building a whole service, a web-based Android iOS app called C19 Control to do all that, and released it in the market. No government funding, didn't take very long, and it's out there now, and it's free, totally free. And that's the sort of social purpose. And when you get a team that's really buzzing and really wants to do something and knows why they're doing it, they work through weekends. There was no ask, they just did. Because they were like, yep, we're going to get that done. We're going to get that done. We need to make that change, whatever. They just did it and then launched it. And it's been fantastic. Great to see. Great for me to be able to sit back and see that happen.
Yeah, I know. I always, when I talk about my team, I always get like teary, because I'm like, they're just so amazing. They're so good. And it's nice that you've got a team there that's doing some great things. So in terms of COVID, how is COVID affecting your organization? Are there any drawbacks? You're able to keep going, and a lot of your team presumably can work from home, or is it spurring on more innovation you're talking about?
I think it's doing all of those. We were a mix of office-based and work from home. And I always liked a bit of office-based because I love the face-to-face. I love the interactions. I love when you've got problems to solve. It's the unexpected conversations that might give you the answers to some of those problems. But we had done a bit more working from home. So when we saw other countries starting to have issues and lockdown, we could see it coming. We were, I think, a little bit ahead of that curve. So we went to a work from home model across the whole company quite quickly. And we've been doing that for a while now. And perhaps me being one of the more skeptical about working from home, I think it's going really well. If anything, you have to remind people to switch off, because your days draw in hours and everything. But I think we'll look forward to getting back, because I miss the social side of your team. You can't get the same connection. In terms of what's it doing for our customers, we know they're going through a really hard time. So, it's really key that we listen to them and make whatever changes we can to software as quickly as we can. Listening to your point to the minister about recording data and having to fill in forms, we're very eager to know, how do we facilitate the data exchange? How do we make it really easy so that data that's being gathered at the point of care by workforce can be filtered in to the CCGs, the CQC, the LGAs, whoever else needs it, with the minimum of effort. So that's a bit of a mission that we're on at the moment.
Oh my gosh, if you do that, then I don't know what, that will just change the world for us, I think. Because my point was, like you said, realistically, if you're a care provider and you've got 6 or 7 local authorities that you're working with, you've got to fill out 6 or 7 bits of information that they want. Then this 600 million, which Rishi announced, the Chancellor announced yesterday, if I can say it, there's a hurdle. You've got to fill out certain stuff to get hold of that. Then you've got the CQC that are emailing you every day for information, and then you've got to manage the service. You've got to do the day job. So it seems really bizarre to me that in this age, when we've got apps all over coming out of our ears, and you've then that they're not just doing it. I don't know. I don't get how these things work. But if you could do that, then that would be fantastic. You talked about the app that your team had the idea for. Now, Lucy's asking, what's the app called?
C19 Control.
C19.
If you go to www.c19control.com, you'll see a page dedicated to that app, and it's totally free.
Great. Well,
and will be. It's not one of those free for a while, then you get charged type stuff. It's free as long as COVID's needed. It's needed for that.
That's really good. And then Mark Stiles is just wondering, why does it take a pandemic for the government to adopt something like the Care Badge?
They had started. We were in discussions for quite a few months, but it's not a quick and easy thing to suddenly decide you're going to create a national identity and a brand for one of the most important sectors of society. As we know, over 2 million people working in social care across the UK. So somebody in the Department of Health and Social Care has to agree that they want to do that, and then they have to agree that the Care Badge is the right brand. When we first came up with the idea, along with Care England, we were sitting around going, what should the badge look like? It was kind of obvious it should say care, but we thought of other things. What else could it be? There were no acronyms that we could use. We had to think about colors, shapes, sizes. So we'd done that work, and then for the department had to then say, okay, I think they understand you take on more than the badge. You're taking on the identity, the hopes of the sector. And that is a lot to take on, and then they have to go and manage that really well. So we started talking to them. I was going to look up and see when our first email was sent to them, but it was months before the pandemic.
Okay.
But the pandemic accelerated the process.
Yeah.
So we were making progress, and the government was open. We were knocking on open doors, but things do move slowly. There's a lot for the department to do, and then it got accelerated in.
Which is helpful to know, because it's like the Care Badge itself. People think that this has just been, dreamt up really, really quickly as a solution to criticisms, whatever. But actually, it's been happening in the background for a long time anyway. But it's just been rolled out really quickly. So under COVID, which is helpful. So you were talking to me a little bit earlier about some of the things that you're doing to make things a little bit fun at home. And I thought that was really interesting. I'm going to put you on the spot now, but I was I got this off camera from Roy Lilly, and he was talking about the guidance, and he said really good way to see your partner is to employ them as a cleaner. That's one way. Or if you want to see your relative, you can just ask them to put the house on rent or something, and then go around and visit it. So with the estate agent. So yeah, it's all a bit crazy times. But you have a dress up every now and again in your house. Is that right?
Yes. Well, it's for the company. It was a weird clothes day. It was because slowly, as you see people on video call, you can start to see different dress sensors coming through. There's not so much of an office feel to it. So people started wearing the odd hat now and then we just decided, well, on a Friday, let's have a weird clothes day and follow it up by a sort of online cocktail party to wind down. And that's, you got to do these things when the team's working as hard as they are to get stuff out. You got to have a bit of fun. So yeah, I dressed up. I wasn't sure what to dress up in. I had an old Hawaiian shirt from somewhere, but my daughter had a banana suit from a festival. And so she helpfully offered that to me. So I put the two together, became a Hawaiian banana. But you gotta have your wind downs after you've done the hard work as well. So
absolutely. And on the thought of you in a banana suit, there we go. We've come to pretty much the end of our Chat for Care session, because we've got to give ourselves some time to get outside and clap for our carers, of course. So it's been really good to have you on, and for people to hear a little bit more about the history of the badge and everything that you're doing in Every Life technologies. I'm really excited to hear what comes out. If you can get that app, that would mean that all care providers just reply once to one system. I think, that would be amazing. So watch this space. And people can follow you on Twitter. We haven't actually got your Twitter handle up here, but Every Life Technologies, people can Google it and find it, and you know, they'll find you as well. So thank you very much, Robin. Great to have you on.
Thank you, Sophie.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
And thank you everyone for watching this evening. Next week we will be having guests on Wednesday and on Thursday. We'll be having someone from, I think we've got Skills for Care tomorrow. And we've also got someone from Social Work England. So that's a new regulator for the social work sector, for social workers. So I'm really interested in finding out what that is, how that operates, and what it's replacing. So again, if you want more information on when this is going to come out, like our Facebook page or subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you click on the bell, then you'll get notifications, so you don't have to do anything else. But for now, thank you so much for watching. I hope it's been interesting. I hope that you will share this video and you will tell your colleagues and your friends to get involved and listen to us next week. So take care, everybody.